The following program is rated TV MAL. It contains strong language and is intended only for mature audiences.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Go right on in.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
You are back for another bite from the Beer Brothers. Glad you are joining us, and for all you first-time viewers, welcome to BREWS
and BREWS.
My partner in crime, my brother Rick. What's up?
You want me to salute this walking pile of pus? Salute my ass. Let's go, son.
Here's the one thing, is that I kind of feel you're reintroducing me to the Romero movies, which is awesome. So the one thing you're bringing into this series for us, for all you guys who don't know, I am Joe the Psychologist. Tonight we are discussing another chapter in the Romero movies. Another one I'm gonna go ahead and add to my list of appreciation as far as horror done right. So what movie are we talking about? Day of the Dead, written and directed by the great George Romero. The movie stars Laurie Cadile as Dr. Sarah Bowman, Joseph Pilato as Captain Henry Rhodes, and Richard Liberty as Dr. Logan, or better known as Dr. Frankenstein. But first, before we talk about the movie, obviously, we're going to talk about what we're drinking. And Rick, I'm going to admit to you right now, I know we like to introduce stuff, but I have a cruise coming up and I've been picking up some overtime and I've been too tired to go to the store. And thankfully, I always have in my refrigerator my favorite beer, which is Stella Artois.
A tasty beverage.
Oh, I love Stella's. What are you drinking tonight?
What up, son? Like you said, you know what? I don't got nothing new either. It's the summertime. It's gonna be one hell of a summer, bro, let me tell you. So I am prepared because I got the old-fashioned I was gonna say Samuel Jackson. Samuel Adams Summer Ale, a refreshing, tasty beverage. I love this beer, let me tell you. It ain't my favorite Sam Adams, but when I drink it, I know it's the summertime. I got my jaw shirt, so I am ready for this.
Salud.
Oh, fuck. Salud.
Let's take a bite into this one. As I said, we are doing Day of the Dead. What we're dealing now with is, the outbreak has happened. And in this movie, you have soldiers, contractors, and scientists. And they're at a facility in the Everglades. Okay, so first of all, fun fact, I live in Florida. This shit is sand. There is no fucking bunker at all down here this deep. But, so the beginning part was shot in Fort Myers, Florida. But when you're in the mines, that's actually Pennsylvania. Coming from Connecticut, yeah, I can fucking tell when we're underground up in the New England area. I mean, it's not here. This facility is for scientists to figure out what's going on with the zombies. What were they actually trying to do in this bunker?
So the fascinating thing about this particular group that's set up, it's a mixture of civilians and scientists and armed forces, all put together in this fucking smorgasbord of fucking madness because they're locked down in a mine together. Keep that in mind. They're underground. And I love how you mentioned the fact that this takes place in Florida. Once they get to the mine and the elevator shaft comes up, they're in Florida. Within a second of a frame, they go from Florida to Pittsburgh. And you can't even tell, which is hilarious. They got the same clothing on, everything, the hair is all the same, so kudos for that one. I don't know how they pulled that one off.
Good direction on that one.
Yes,
that's a fucking cool ass direction.
Yeah, so what they're trying to do here is pretty much understand what is happening in this. We're pretty not too far into the zombie apocalypse because this is a weird timeline because George Romero's films, obviously, they're connected in the same universe, but it's not the same time frame. Because Night of the Living Dead obviously was in the 60s. Night of the Living Dead dealt with a lot of racism. Dawn of the Dead obviously takes place in the 70s. That's peace and love, my friends. And what's big at that time? Commercialism, you know what I'm saying? Consumerism. Materialistic items that take over your life and means more to you than what's happening around you. Now, Day of the Dead takes place in the 80s, and of course, 80s was a time of war. Whether it's the Cold War, Romero, he ran with it. So he took all this this whole cesspool of different personalities, put them together in his pot and boiled it all together, and we got Day of the Dead, which this is a film that many people find insufferable because there is no likable characters. This is the movie that George Romero says all the real trolls pick as their favorite. I think this is Romero's greatest film. It's not my favorite film because Dawn of the Dead will always be that. But as far as on a technical level, aside from a few of the actors, great fucking film, and we're gonna go through that and explain to you why this is a great fucking film.
I've said this before, and we've talked about it in Three Corners, and I said it here. And Romero is, for me, one of the masterpieces in putting social commentary in without it just being like, bam, here it is. You know what I mean? And I was watching it and I go, about military. Got it. Oh, but it wasn't done in a way that it was just in my face.
It feels natural. You know?
It feels
organic,
natural.
very
Yes.
organic. Yeah.
Yes, she was trying to find a cure. To her, that was the answer to this. And then you had Dr. Frankenstein, who felt that we can learn how to teach them and control them. And Frankenstein said, your method is going to take much longer than my method will.
And he's a scientist, so he knows there's no cure. So he's trying to figure out, okay, there's no cure. How are we gonna live with these motherfuckers? You know?
Yeah. So you had these two scientists that were trying to figure out one to end it and one to how to work with it. Frankenstein was kind of right. I gotta say his methods, and I'm like, Dr. Frankenstein, why did they refer to him that way? And I haven't seen this movie in a long time, to be quite honest with you. And then when you see his lab and he's all covered in, I'm like, oh, okay.
I love how he's all covered in blood.
Covered in
all
blood.
The time.
Now, mind you,
The great
you would
Richard
think
Liberty.
they would be worried about that he'd get infected with that blood of him. But anyway, plot hole. So because I haven't seen it in a while, and the last time I saw it, I actually remembered this movie being more comical, to be honest with you. And then watching it again, it wasn't. Not at all.
Total opposite of Dawn of the Dead.
Yes. So we get introduced to a variant. Variant? You don't know what a variant is? Watch The Walking Dead and you know what a variant is. But that was, at least for me, where it was coined. However, is Bub the original variant here?
Bub is absolutely 100%.
I mean, that's how I feel. One of my favorite scenes, because I'm a huge Stephen King fan, is when he put the stuff in front of him. It was the Salem's Lot book.
Salem's Lot.
I fucking had that copy of that book.
George and Stephen King they were best friends, and Stephen King will cameo in his film and all the time, his earlier films at least. And seeing Salem's Lot there, definitely by design, obviously.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it.
Great
And
scene, yeah.
from what the story was that Bub was a name that Dr. Logan's dad used.
Yeah, correct.
And so he was
Bub.
basically trying to teach it, like show that there's muscle memory. Turns out that Bub was a former military person. So, you know, the scene with the gun, it showed the muscle memory, you know, when he cocked it. So when you saw Bub, you know, like cock that gun, he got the muscle memory. So it let you know that something was coming up. Like, obviously, that was going to be an important part of something later. I will say, Rick, when I was watching it, though, there was a conversation we had as far as makeup and the coloring. And I felt that Bub's coloring was a little off.
Really? The quality of the makeups between Dawn of the Dead and this film, Day of the Dead, this is, to
it
me,
was much better.
Tom Savini's greatest work of art, I always say, is this film here.
All right.
The Day of the Dead script, the original script, is fucking notorious. If you read the actual script, it's huge. They took elements that was used later on in Land of the Dead, but it was originally conceived for this film, but he couldn't get the budget to go there, so he had to consolidate everything and make it much smaller. So he had some wild ideas, like zombies trained as soldiers that would fight against the actual survivors and military personnel, shit like that. It was wild. It was completely wild. So he shortened it, and he kept Bub. Bub was always going to be the one he kept. When I first saw this film, I didn't like Bub because when I was younger, I was like, oh, zombies can't talk, you know. What is this? But as I was older and I grew to appreciate the performance of Howard Sherman, who plays Bub. Fun fact, he was on the episode of Seinfeld with the Junior Mint. If you watch Seinfeld and you know the term Junior Mint, you know the episode I'm talking about. So
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, he's such a good actor. And as Bub, he was sympathetic. You were actually rooting for a zombie. I don't know when is the last time I rooted for a zombie, but it was Bub because he gave off so much sympathy, and the fact that he did learn things, that he knew things, but yet it didn't take it too over the top, because once Frankenstein put the fucking meat in front of him, he reverted. Yeah. So it's awesome stuff.
You mentioned his name. Once again, Tom Savini was involved with this.
Oh yeah.
2 questions. First of all, did I miss a Tom Savini cameo? And what did you think of Tom Savini's special effects? And not just that, his assistant was Greg Nicotero.
Yes, a very young
So,
Greg Nicotero.
and I'm like, oh my god, it's all like literally The Walking Dead.
And the fascinating part, you mentioned Tom Savini, because this movie here, after Dawn of the Dead, Romero got this 3-picture deal with United Film Distribution Company, and they wanted 3 films from George. The 3 films they wanted, it don't matter what it was, but they needed 3 films. So after Dawn, he didn't want to go back into like horror right away. So he did Night Riders, which is one of my fucking all-time favorite films. I'm not even kidding you. It's not a horror film, but it's a classic, underrated, underappreciated film. No one's seen it. And the second film was Creepshow. All of a sudden, and now it's a big release, you know, because you got Stephen King on board as the writer, actors like Leslie Nielsen, Ted Danson. I mean, you got big names that are not associated with horror.
Adrian Barbeau.
So mixing with George's other cast members that he's always has in his films. Ed Harris was in Creepshow, but he was also in Night Riders. Stephen King's cameos in Night Riders and in Creepshow too. It's fine. But Tom Savini, to go back to Tom Savini, of course, yeah, Tom was in Martin, he was in Dawn of the Dead, he was in Creepshow, he was in Night Riders, he was in everything, but he was not
in this. Okay.
Not in, his brother was in this film. Yeah, no Tom cameo.
All right, I really was looking because I was worried that I was gonna miss it, and you were gonna
no.
And so this is the one he did not appear.
He was too busy because this. Like I said, this is his work. This is his masterpiece, his work of art, man. Not just the makeup, but the practical effects, man. There's no CGI, man. There's not one computer present in this film. Not because it's a bad thing. CGI could enhance a good practical effect. I'm not against CGI. I'm against overly abundant use of CGI when you don't need it. So
mix it. You can still mix both of them.
I love CGI. If it's used in the right way, combined with practical, it's a good thing. When you saw Captain Rhodes get ripped in half. And he's still yelling, choke, you know, and it's funny because if you notice that scene, Nicotero was the one setting up the effects in that scene. They put a rubber chicken and mixing the guts. Look at one of the zombies when he pulls up the intestines. He pulls out a fucking rubber chicken. I don't know how you missed it. It's clear as day. I don't like, what the fuck is that? Why is there a rubber?
But you didn't notice it the first time around.
Nah, but I was a kid. But
right.
Also, to peel back the curtain a bit, that scene there, all the guts were real, animal guts that they got from a slaughterhouse. But when they had it locked in a refrigerator, one night they were shooting before they got to the scene was the next day rather. And what happened was there was a power outage, so they lost power. The refrigerator was cut. So when they came back the next morning, and they opened up the refrigerator, the rot that they smelled, and they couldn't get new ones. So they put poor Joseph Pilato in this fucking hole in the floor.
Oh my god.
If you notice that scene, the zombies, a lot of them have like little tissues in their noses so they can't breathe it in. But of course, my man Joe Pilato couldn't do it. So as soon as they yell cut, he just hurls.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's trust me. Nicotero was one of those guys. You know that, right?
No.
Yeah, he was one of the soldiers. Nicotero. Yeah.
Oh,
he was the guy that was like, he was smoking the weed when they were having the briefing, and then somebody mentioned about getting paid for it, and Nicotero was like, "Hey, I ain't getting paid."
The younger looking one?
Yeah, he had the beard. Yeah, longer. He's the one that got shot up and got killed. That was Nicotero's camp. And near the end of the film, when our heroes are passing through the laboratories, and they pull the sheet off of the zombie's head. That's mechanicalized, and it's got like the fucking motorized mouth opening. That's Nicotero's head. They actually took his head and scoped it out of his face. So
that's one of the ones I thought was cute. So off topic there, but yeah. Oh, so Greg was cute when he was young. Oh shit. I loved the bloodiness towards the end. This was another one of those movies that it was a lot of character driven. I did like Sarah's character.
Yeah, you could tell this is an 80s film because the language used in this film, especially with like the way they treated Miguel.
Miguel and John. Miguel, yeah, that's how he says Jello. Yellow. I'm like, that is not how we say it actually, but anyway.
He was the
saying
only
it.
one getting pussy too, which is funny.
John also. There were a couple things that were said about John because Adam goes, "Ooh, you can't get away with that now."
Yeah, no, you can't. No.
Oh yeah, no. Please
The
don't.
language of this film.
Yeah, woke people don't go after horror movies.
Oh,
leave our horror movies alone. It's just
Yeah.
horror movies. First of all, it's horror movies, but anyway.
But that's
Yeah,
how people talked back then. It was
They
that's
did.
how
They
it was.
did. It
Nobody
literally-
cared, you know.
Yeah, no. It is how they talk back then.
Everyone that was ripped apart were characters you wanted to see get ripped apart.
Yes, unlike the other ones.
Yes.
Unlike the other ones.
Growing up, this is one of the movies that my brother always had going on in the household. So one thing I gotta say, this film here, the score is so underrated. The score in this film, from the very beginning with the hello,
Gorillas.
like you feel it. Like if you listen to it with a good sound system, it's amazing and it's scary. It's depressing. It makes you feel like it's the end of the world, bro. And this is all that's left. I want to point out the amazing score in this film because again, no library music. George always used library music stock. Goblin was outsourced. They produced music for Dawn of the Dead, but this film was composed by one person. And what's nice about it follows an overall theme, which George rarely did back in that time because he always used a lot of library music and just pieced it together. Here he has an actual composer he's working with that boom 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 scene to scene. Gary Clark. This guy has a fascinating story and he just passed away like in this past year or the year before. He was sold as a baby on the streets in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
No.
He was raised here. He was sold.
No.
Yes. So
Oh
he
my
grew up
God.
here with a family that just bought him to save him from a life of like debauchery, bro. I'm from Bridgeport, Connecticut, so Joe as well. Yes.
Listen, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
I'm like,
He's
no.
Puerto
Here's
Rico.
the thing, though. I was born in Puerto Rico, but I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Yeah, Joe Pilato, who plays Captain Rhodes. Another fun fact with him: he was gonna play George Clooney's role in From Dusk Till Dawn. If you go look for footage, there's test footage.
I can see it.
Dr. Fisher in this film, that's my boy. That is the great actor who was in Martin. He played Martin, the zombie in Creepshow. It's Father's Day.
No.
Again,
That's him.
he was in Night Riders as well. The great John Amplis, who also was the fake Puerto Rican in Dawn of the Dead. He was Martinez. So, I love it. It's good stuff.
I kind of feel though that for the Puerto Rican, the Spanish guy, I think was he Italian?
Oh yeah, he wasn't Spanish. That guy.
Yeah, no,
he
was
played a Spanish character.
Yeah, again, you know.
I love this film from top to bottom. I think this film is definitely Romero's most underappreciated film, in my opinion.
It actually started with Romero. How humans
Yeah.
are the
That's way
evil.
before Walking Dead, and you see where it started.
That's
Even
what I'm saying.
Romero had that implanted in the roots.
Because for the majority of the movie is the scientists and the soldiers against each other. The back and forth. I got such an appreciation for this movie.
Trust me, watch it a couple. Every time you watch it, you would appreciate it more and more with each view.
And the soundtrack, I agree. If the soundtrack can get your heartbeat as you're watching it, it's working. It's doing its job. It's meant for you to be in this moment with these characters.
George is saying at the end of the world, this is all that's left, bro. Captain Rhodes is one of my all-time favorite
Such a
characters.
Dick.
George honestly didn't edit this film. Someone else edited it for him. That's another thing with this film. George always edited his own shit, not this one. Watch Day of the Dead because this is pure 80s, bro. There's cheese in there because, again, like the Nicotero characters and all the side guys, horrible actors, man. Like they give them one or two lines, even those are bad. Like, oh my god, but it adds to the film because again, it's a time capsule, a sign of the times, and they will never make another movie like this.
No.
Toss a little higher. Okay, George.
All right, here we go, folks. Action. Howard, pump the blood now. Tasso, go. Turn that t-shirt apart. Get in there. Tasso, get in there. Not too high. Not too high. Dig into that chest. Below the belly button. Dig in. Like you're biting. Pull it apart. Pull the legs now. Pull the legs. Go. Pull the legs. Go. Pull the legs. All right. Put the hands down. All right. Pump that blood, Howard.
All right, guys. So for the next episode, I introduced Rick into this movie. Yeah, there's going to be comparisons. Yeah, if you follow us on social media, in 2 weeks, you'll find out what movie it is. So until then, Rick, what do we all cheer for?
We all cheer with big bottles of beer. And with that being said, my name is Ricky Grind.
And I am Joe the Psychologist. Until next time, don't get bit.
Destiny's devils be savages. Slim than a chance with the averages. Sitting on the low like you added slick. Darkness make you disappear like a magic trick. Put up to the table, come down and sit. These devils try to tie you the crown with it. Now you surrounded by counterfeits, trying to chop you up into 1,000 bits.